This is the World Satsanga on the 20th of February 2016. Start the recording. And welcome to this Satsanga on the 20th of February. And just going through the agenda for today. Go through the stabilisation of the system, which is what we've just done. And the first talk is about the importance of finding a guru, or a sifu, sensei, senpai, teacher, whatever you want to call them. It all means the same name, or not, as the case may be. What the role of the guru or teacher is really. And then we've got some questions here which Ula's presented to me to work with the group with. I'll ask Ula if she can to do what she normally does, which is to cut and paste the questions onto the IM messaging service. And then we've got end of meet meditation, and this time I'm going to do what I've been trying to do, or promising to do for the last two sessions, which is the meditation to help remove world conflicts. And we'll work together on that as a collective and create the synergetic effect associated with it. Okay, let me just confirm. Okay, Chris has just come on board as well. Fantastic. Okay, so good. Oh, Atso's at Houston Airport. Well, it's a bit of a change in location for you, Atso, but fantastic. He's going to listen in, which is great. So he won't be participating in terms of vocalising, but he'll be listening in, which is fantastic. So thank you for that, Atso. Excellent. So, having let the system settle down, and we've established who's here, let's talk about gurus now. So a guru is a teacher, or a sensei, or a senpai, or a sifu, depending upon which language you use, depends upon, or Diki Horace in Greek, depending on where you live in the world, depends upon what emphasis you put on this particular label for a person who teaches you. The thing is that they have a lesser or greater emphasis depending upon your culture. But the word guru tends to have the biggest impact, I feel, in terms of religious texts. And I want to very quickly go through why we need a guru, or why we don't need a guru as well. Because this is important, because we all need a teacher at some point, but also we need to become our own person at some point. And I'll explain why. When we are going through our incarnate existence, whether that is being taught normal, everyday lessons about how to live, how to work, how to educate ourselves, how to help others, how to raise families, how to manage our finances, and how to make a home and create a family, etc. We are subjected to a number of different basic series of information. But the interesting thing is that while we're receiving this basic training, we go through a schooling system. And it'll be no shock to us all to realise that as we get older, we change our teachers. Now, from the human being perspective, we change our teachers when we reach a point that the teacher has taught us what they can teach. And so from when we go to, in the UK, it's sometimes kindergarten or nursery school, and then we go to junior school, and then sort of a senior school, and then college or university. I can't remember the exact labels we have in the States, but it'll be sort of like kindergarten, and then a sort of a preliminary school, then a junior high school, then a high school, then college maybe, and then university. It's a similar sort of thing. But what we do though is we get educated. We get basic levels of education, and when we receive that education, and we've got to the point where the teacher or teachers have given us all we can cope with, or all they can teach us at a certain age limit or educational level, they then move out of the way, and we move into a different class. Sometimes we're graded depending upon our abilities, and we receive new teachers. and these teachers teach us what they've got to teach us. And so we start to move upwards and onwards, because the teachers come in to replace the old teachers. They have a greater depth of detail of the subject matters that we've been previously taught. And so we start to gain a depth of experience and knowledge that builds upon itself as we go through our schooling. And so when we start school, we may learn basic information about our language and about mathematics and about sort of the greater detail about our human reality. And then as we move further up the educational ladder, we'll learn how to manipulate slightly difficult mathematics, or we will know more vocabulary or more about how to manipulate our language, or things like verbs and nouns, participles, those sorts of things, past, present and future participles. And we might even learn a different language. And so we learn a bit more, and then we get to another level where those teachers have taught us all they are taught to teach us, as it were. And then we move up to the next level of teachers, and they teach us things like calculus, for instance, or the greater meaning of language, and all of these different things, including other sciences like maths, other than just maths, physics and chemistry and biology. And so we move up the educational position to the point where we can gain certain levels of understanding of basic information, which allows us to eventually go through levels of different examination, allowing us to gain qualifications that will subsequently allow us to be employed later. Well, when we come down to the spiritual side of things, the function is not so progressive. The word guru, it means teacher. The word sensei means teacher, but it also means that person, he or she, that came before us, i.e. that person who's got more experience than us. But the word sensei in Japanese means something different to the spiritual undertaking of the guru in the Hindu or Indian texts. And so when we're learning our spiritual education, we will find a guru or find a teacher who resonates with us. We won't just find a teacher that is down the road or is within a subject matter that we're interested in. We have to find that teacher based upon our own experience, our own ability, our own desires, and our own capability and potential, so to speak. And the guru will also choose us. So it's a little bit of a two-edged sword here, because it's not just a case of we find the guru, but we also have to find the guru that will take us on board as well and teach us as well. So we have a condition where not only can we find a teacher or a guru, but that teacher has to accept us. And more importantly, we have to find that teacher within a certain time frame, for instance, so that we don't lose any of our natural abilities in terms of things that might distract us and move us away from our spiritual path by luring us to the physical. So when we find a teacher and they accept us, and it could be the other way around, it could be the teacher would accept us knowing that we are the student that they're supposed to have. We then work with that guru, that teacher, from the Hindu perspective for the rest of your life. And that will be that the guru will take you into his or her ashram or teaching or school, and will teach you everything that they know. But the issue is that with the older teachings, you would maintain that guru even after the physical demise of that guru's human vehicle or body. And so there is still the link between the student and the teacher or guru when the guru is gone or is replaced by another. And so we start to see a situation here where the student never actually becomes a teacher in his own right, or is able to progress beyond that in his own right. And so you still get this student-teacher relationship, which, in my understanding, isn't healthy. But I'll explain why in a moment, why that's changed, why it should change, why we should have a different understanding. Because the whole point of having the guru in the old days was that the guru would keep you close to them so that you would maintain the same level of frequency as them. And that would mean that your progression, your teaching could be accelerated. I'm just going to see if I can add John back into the call, and so you've got this perpetuation here. Now, when we have this situation where the guru is holding the energy, so to speak, for the students, although experiencing heightened levels of ability associated with the teaching of the guru, they don't specifically or don't specifically learn to be able to hold that level of energy themselves. They always rely on the guru, and you'll hear many individuals say, "Well, I can only reach these levels of meditation. I can only reach these levels of experience when the teacher, the guru, is with them." And this, for me, is a little bit of a misnomer, because sometimes the gurus get into a position where they want to have the student stay as a student with them, and this is an energy which stays with them even when the physical body is demised. So it's like there's a dependency there between the student and the teacher. The teacher wants the student to stay a student and not progress beyond that, and the student wants the teacher to stay their teacher even when that teacher has moved back into the energetic. And so this link between the two stays. But it doesn't allow that student, as I've just said, to progress to become their own person. Now, although we've got this link where the student and the teacher together allow the student to reach different levels of experience, and that potential, in most instances, was only available to the student in the same energies or the same environments as the teacher, or maintain the link of the teacher, actually it stops that individual becoming their own guru. And so what we need to do at that point is to move away from the guru. In the old days, because of the low frequencies, this student-guru, student-teacher relationship needed to be maintained, because there was the frequencies were that low. The moment you moved out of the bubble of the ashram or the school, or simply the house or the location that the teacher existed within and taught his pupils, that pupil, that student would start to move down the frequencies, and so there was a need to stay close to the teacher to maintain those frequencies, and therefore maintain this ability to go to different and higher levels of understanding and energetic experience. But these days, the Earth is a different place. It's a much higher frequency than it was, even though we have these little outbursts of radical terrorism or war or aggression. In general, the Earth is a much higher frequential body than it used to be. And so now we've got to the position where we don't need to maintain the link between the teacher and the student. The teacher can teach the student to a level that it is capable of teaching that student to, based upon its own level of experience and knowledge and desire to teach the student to a certain level. But then that guru should pass on, in the same way as we do with our physical education, so to speak, not physical education in terms of sports, but physical education in terms of our normal human education. That guru then should pass that student on to another guru who can take them further, and that progression should be like a step upwards. So each teacher should teach the student to the level that they're capable of doing, then let them go. They can either suggest another guru, teacher, or the student can be left to find another guru or teacher that is of the same thought process, same direction, so to speak, as they want to go into. And so the students should start to use the different teachers as a stepping stone, so to speak. So you move upwards all the time until you get to a point where, if everything works out well, the student itself can become a master or a teacher in its own right, and therefore that student then goes into the cycle of taking on board students, teaching them to the capability they want to teach them to, and then passing them on, for instance. And so it's very important now to realise that you should use your teacher not with reverence but with respect, and know when it's time to move on. Know when you have to move on to a different teacher, or when you feel that you've reached a level that is consistent with your own desires or thought processes, and then stay there if you want to. You can then progress in your own right in whichever direction you want to go into. As long as the student recognises that there's always a chance to progress and they don't stay static or stagnant, then the student can move away from the particular guru that's taken them to a certain level, and then can work on themselves and their own, knowing that they can still progress based upon their own experimentation with meditation, their own thought processes, desires, channeled information. They can move on in their own right, and then they may, in some instances, decide they want to become a teacher or a guru in their own right, and teach what they've learned about themselves and about the greater reality around them, and around themselves and others, and so they can help others to understand themselves and their environment, educating them to a level where they are much more than they would have been had they just gone through the sort of physical education, so to speak, the normal sort of human education process or cycle that we go through from kindergarten to university. So it's important to realise that a guru is important, because raw talent doesn't get you everywhere. Raw talent needs to be honed, it needs to be modelled, it needs to be guided, it needs to be shown that it can be expansive, and that's what the guru does. It takes that raw talent and massages it into the very best. Well, a good guru should, by the way, massages the student into the very best that they can be, pushing them beyond the capabilities that they think they could do, or the capabilities that are based upon raw talent or raw untuned talent. And then when they've done that, they'll let them go to investigate on their own. So there's a need for the guru, but there's also a need to move away from the guru when the guru either says that it's time for you to move on and find another teacher, or it's time for you to move on and do your own investigations into self. You've got enough ability to move forwards, or that the student decides that the information that they've received from that particular guru has taken them as far as they want to go in that particular direction, and then they can move on. There was a magazine I read a number of years ago that was tracking a Western spiritual leader, and I can't remember the guy's name now, but basically he was describing his own process of going from teacher to teacher, and his guide and helpers were presenting themselves to him to guide him to these different teachers. And what he was describing, this individual, was that he was being taken from teacher to teacher to just experience something from that teacher. And that something could have been a certain meditation technique, it could have been certain levels of symbology, It could have been understanding some of the natural functions of herbs or homeopathics, etc. But he was, what he was doing, he was going from teacher to teacher. He was being guided by his guides and helpers, very, very I'm not going to say forcefully, but very logically and very interactively between the guide and himself. And he'd go to a teacher, he'd learn something, and he may stay with that teacher for a week or a month, or merely a few hours. And then all of a sudden, the guide and helpers would say to him, "Okay, you've learned enough now from this teacher, we'll take you to the next one." And so he was guru hopping, so to speak, between one guru and another guru, until he reached a point where the guide and helpers said to him, "You've reached the knowledge that you need to have to allow you to progress further in your own particular role on this planet and the level of service that you're going to provide." And so basically he was going around, if you think about it, it's like being at a hardware store, and he was going around all the different shelves and picking the different tools, different spanners, different screwdrivers, different drills, different woodworking tools, different metalworking tools. He was buying all of these different things to enable him to do a job, and that was basically it. He was going to these different gurus, the shelves, to get the different tools, whatever they were good at, to enable him to have this toolbox, this energetic toolbox, so he could move forwards and do his role. And I felt that was a really relevant thing to say, that really he wasn't abusing the guru's teaching. He wasn't going there and robbing them of their knowledge and then moving away, or stealing their knowledge and moving away. He was basically taking what he needed to have to move forwards and do his work. And a true guru would recognise that. A true guru would recognise that they have taken a student to the maximum of their capacity as guru, and therefore move them on to another guru, and or recognise that the student will turn around at some point and say, "I've learned all I can learn from you. I need to move on to another teacher or guru, and therefore move on." And a good guru will recognise that. They'll know when to bow out and let the student move forwards. And on top of this, a good guru will know when it's time to leave the planet. They'll know when the work that they've done is finished. They'll know when there's other teachers or other gurus that are going to take the expansivity of the students further forwards, and they will know when that the insistence of their own teachings would slow students down. And so a good guru will know also when to leave the planet. It will know, we're not talking about suicide here, they will know when it's time to leave, and therefore their true energetic self, or their higher self, or their the God's head or over soul will along with the guide and helpers activate one of the termination junctures, so that the human body starts to demise naturally rather than going through the suicide route. So it's a case of there's a natural way of moving out of the greater reality, as it were, the greater arena associated with being a teacher and a guru. And so that's it. It's very much a case of we all need a guru at certain points. We can sometimes move on, or the guru will move us on to a different guru, and a good guru will take us to the maximum of their capability. They will stretch us, and then at some point we can become the master of everything we've been taught, and we're able to take that mastery forwards, become teachers in our own right, and then extend the process from our perspective as a teacher rather than being the student. And again, with joy in our hearts, we take the students, and when we've taught them everything that they need to know, we've seen that their level of ability is consistent with somebody who's either close on mastery or has mastered the functions or abilities or the processes and procedures associated with achieving certain levels of self-awareness. They'll move the student on. Okay, so that's why we need a guru and why we don't need a guru. We don't need a guru when we've achieved certain levels of mastery. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is go through those questions that Ulla sent, which will, let's make sure I've got the right email here, because I've got two versions of this. Let's get the inbox sorted out. Right. Okay, so these questions relate to that short talk, short, it's nearly half an hour, to talk about the gurus. Let's see if I can, got something else who wants to drop in here. Let's see if I can get that. Okay. So, first question is...
Hi, sorry.
Hi Marita. Okay. So
Sorry.
okay, if you can put your microphone on mute and we'll carry on. We've just been talking about gurus, and it's on the recording, so it's you can catch up later, that's no problem. So let's have a look at this. All of these questions are sort of rotate around the subject matter I've just talked about. And the first question is, can you please tell us more about energy sets? How do they function energetically, frequently or chakra-wise in the human form, using the following examples? A guru, like Jesus, was a composite hybrid soul with 12% test sentience, or true energetic self-sentience, made from parts of many aspects in his true energetic self incarnate into one human form. In this particular instance, when we have a spiritual leader such as Jesus or the Buddha or Muhammad and others like Confucius, for instance, we see a human body, and we don't see the detail behind that human body. But in the instance of individuals who need to do a big job and lead lots and lots of different individuals from all over the world, they will have had they will need to draw upon a skill set that isn't specifically aligned to one soul. I'm going to use the word soul here rather than aspect, because it's something that people might be able to understand more readily. Although soul is an aspect, and don't forget that the soul isn't just one particular energy being. It's a function within a higher energy being, the oversoul or the higher self of the Godhead. So, a human body who we see as being a spiritual leader, or is a larger sort of country-based leader, will have a number of different aspects together, or souls together in that same body. One may have the driving function, the ability to animate the body, and then seek energetically information from the others to deal with certain conditions or experiences or things it needs to deal with, or that there may be a number of different souls or aspects in the body, and they may take over the animation of that body at any one time, independently of the one that's the primary driving soul. But in this instance, a hybrid soul is it's like a manufactured soul. It's a soul that's created from certain functions or aspects or experiences of a number of different aspects or souls within itself. Don't forget that a true energetic self, or a Godhead or other soul, can project up to 12 different smaller aspects of itself into multiversal environment, such as, and part of that will be, of course, the physical universe. But each of those will start to develop a specialism, a personality, so to speak, associated with their experiences, and that true energetic self may elect to reuse those souls on a regular basis, or those aspects, as the case may be, on a regular basis, to experience similar things in different ways. So therefore the soul starts to specialise in this experience. But some of those souls, from an individual perspective, wouldn't be able to cope with a particular level of experience or experiences in one go. So the true energy itself may elect to create a hybrid soul, like a 13th soul or a 13th aspect, by using certain functions within a number of those different aspects of itself, or souls, let's say all 12 that are there, it may take one part of a specialism from one of those aspects or souls, another part from another aspect or soul, another part from another aspect or soul, and so it creates a 13th soul or aspect that has a very wide range of abilities that wouldn't normally be available to it in its normal individualized state. And by that I mean that any of the souls that it's got, or any of the aspects of itself that are there, wouldn't have the accumulation of all the different specialisms together. And so it creates a specific hybrid version of all of those different souls or aspects that are part of it. And so in terms of an energy set, it's more like a different signature. It's more like a different signature rather than an energy set itself. The signature has the energy has this level of sentience associated with it, and so that particular aspect or soul will have the characteristics of all those other souls that it's created from. And so it'll be like a patchwork quilt, so to speak, in terms of energies, because the energies that create the soul or the aspect that's projected into the human body will be bits of sentience from those other souls that the true energetic self has used to create this 13th soul. And so it'll still have the same functionality, so to speak. When it's incarnate, it'll still be a single soul or single aspect driving or animating the body. It's just that that particular soul is a mixture of all the different souls or aspects that particular true energetic self has projected in the past. Okay. So that's what a hybrid soul is. It's a mixture of lots of different bits and pieces. Think of it the same way as a toolbox. You know, we just talked about taking the tools from the shelves. It's a bit like the true energetic self doing that. It's got these various different tools that those other souls that are part of it, or there's other aspects of itself that have been projected into physical still got. It takes each of those, it takes the best bits, so to speak, or the bits that are relevant for the experience that the 13th soul needs to have, and then creates the 13th soul out of those bits that are necessary. Okay. So a world leader or president could have a shared vehicle with 4 souls, each contributing 25% to the animate leader. When you have a human body that's got 4 souls, or 4 aspects together, as I just sort of alluded to, basically you'll have one of those souls as the primary soul, and the other 3 will be passive. So one will drive the human form, the human body, and the other 3 will be there for experiential purposes, so to speak, so that the body, as we see it, will be able to cope in a different way with lots of different experiences. But in difference to a hybrid soul, it's a whole soul that's required rather than just a part of a soul. So whereas the hybrid soul is a hybrid of, let's say, 12 parts from 12 different aspects of the true energetic self, a human form that's got 12 whole souls in there will have all of the functionality or the experiences and the evolutionary content and sentience associated with all those 4 souls, but in that body as well. And so you see that when there's a significant level of diversity required rather than specific directed function required. The directed function is when we have a hybrid soul requirement. The diversity is when we have the whole souls associated with the human form. It is quite likely that you get one particular soul animating the human form, and the rest of the souls that are passive just feeding information. Or you can see the personality changing of that particular person, that world leader, for instance. So a different soul or different aspects might change in terms of the one soul that was driving or animating the human form might change with another one. And so each of those 4 souls in this particular example might have turns at animating the human form, and depending upon the environment or the situation that the human form gets itself into, depends upon which particular soul is going to animate or drive that body. Okay, and again that will be the different energy set to be a different level of sentience, but as a whole soul rather than just chunks of sentient energy from different souls to create a 13th soul. Next part is, are these various soul parts active and functional from birth, or do they become activated, in brackets, in different proportions, in brackets, later in life, as needed for leadership, teaching, healing, miracles, mass illusions, mass communication, etc.? I would say that in some instances they're active, depending upon the need, and sometimes they're functional later. So when, for instance, the human form needs to be of a certain level of functionality, then sometimes the functionality of the other souls or the aspects of that hybrid soul would only come into fruition or become prominent at the right sort of time or the right event space, and it can be as something as simple as one of the souls takes the body to a certain level of position within an environment, and then the next soul comes into the driving position. The primary soul, the previous primary soul, moves out, and we then see that the personality changes, and so we start to see there's another soul there. So we've got this ability of moving around a bit more with those different souls. Now, I need to go back in and just look at this. And so it could well be that certain parts of these abilities, the functions of associated with these different souls, may come and go, depending upon the location, the experience, the integration, or the interrelationship with others around it or its environments. So it might be that one particular function comes and then disappears later, never to be used again. Or it might be that a particular function is there from birth and stays there all the way through the incarnation. It just depends upon how these particular functions, so to speak, are required and when they're required and how they're required. Okay. Indigo, crystal and rainbow children and their hybrids of different energy sets, how do they differ energetically? Each of those different names, indigo, crystal and rainbow, are sort of earth spiritual based terms for individuals who display different ability and different levels of capability in terms of their ability to work with others, their communicative ability, their link with their own guides and helpers, their higher self or true energetic self, their ability to recognise or remember their life plan, and their ability to, more importantly, work with higher frequencies and lower frequencies. So they're more tolerant of the frequencies. If you noticed some people who are particularly low frequency individuals, they can't cope with being in the same room sometimes as somebody that's a higher frequency, and they'll pick arguments, or they'll have cross words with, or aggressive words with them, and there'll be no reason for it. It'll just happen. They just can't stand being in the same higher frequency, so they get agitated. And so basically, it's to do with the level of frequency associated with those particular individuals and the capabilities associated with those frequencies. And if we start to see the hybrid versions of the indigo, crystal and rainbow, they become multifaceted, or they have they're not specialised in one particular frequential set that we experience on Earth. When we started to experience these new children coming to Earth, they came in different waves, and Dolores Cannon calls them the 3 waves of volunteers, and each of them came at certain frequential stages within the Earth's recent evolutionary progression from a frequential perspective, and so each of them was capable of working with a slightly higher level of frequency that then is and was prevalent or as part of the base level resonance of the frequential state on Earth. And so as they moved up, there's areas of locally high and locally low frequency, and so we started to need to have hybrids, and now we have hybrids of crystal and indigo, and crystal and rainbow, and rainbow and indigo, and rainbow and crystal, and indigo, crystal and rainbow all together. So there's different types there, and depending upon whether these children are going to be static within their location on the Earth, or whether they're going to move around, depends, and their role, of course, depends upon whether they end up being what particular hybrid of the energies associated with these labels. But again, the labels are relevant to the frequential level of the aspect or soul within the body and the human form, the body itself's ability to cope with higher frequency. Okay. So next one, does the energy set depend upon the mother's or both parents' energy sets or the frequential version of Earth they're born into? It's basically what they bring in. The mother has, or the parents have no no influence whatsoever energetically on the energetic state of the offspring. It's all to do with what's been organised prior to the incarnation, prior to insertion of the aspect or soul into that particular human body. And so you will very likely see very, very advanced spiritual individuals being born into families where both the mother and the father and even their siblings are totally against spiritual behaviours, and that's quite common. You start to see people coming across as being spiritual leaders, and their own families, they're not even religious. So it's nothing to do with the parents themselves. It's to do with the life plan of the aspect or soul, but what's been agreed prior to the incarnation, and therefore the human form that he incarnates into is, I'm going to use the word manufactured, or is manifested to a frequential level that's consistent with that particular soul, its ability, and its necessary functionality. Okay. Next one is autistic children have half the energy set of indigo, crystal, rainbow. What does this mean? How does half energy sets work in human form? And the question is, does that mean composite chakras? We are starting to see composite chakras with certain individuals, and by composite chakras, I mean that the chakras that we normally have as the basal root chakra, which is the first chakra, the sacral chakra, and that's the front and rear aspects of those, the sacral chakra, which is the second chakra, and the third chakra, which is the solar chakra, which is the front and rear, are all associated with the gross physical. But there are individuals whose frequential status progressed to the point where those three chakras aren't necessary because they're working at a higher frequency. So they have a single chakra that copes with all those three frequencies, because their body is dealing with the higher frequencies associated with the fourth, which is the heart chakra, the fifth, which is the throat chakra, the sixth, which is the spiritual or third eye chakra, and the seventh, which is the crown chakra. So the composite chakras tend to be at the moment in lower frequencies. But the autistic children have, I'm going to use the word, rather than half energy set, they tend to sort of have more of a hybrid condition, where it's half crystal, half indigo, half rainbow, half crystal, that sort of stuff. And it's more of a case of they are generally of a frequency associated with one of those particular indications of indigo, crystal, rainbow, but not all of it. And so they're sort of like semi-connected, but not all. But they're semi-connected all the time, rather than sort of connected to various different stages based upon meditation or through higher frequential existence. They tend to be sort of all there or not, as the case may be, or halfway there, as the case may be. But the autistic children, they're a bit. I actually like to think of them as potentially the new state, the new sort of state level of Homo sapien, as to where we're going to be, because they're a more trusting mindset. They're loving. They haven't got an aggressive thought in their minds. From my own personal experience, they're wonderful individuals, and they are very, very. As with people with Asperger's, they're very trusting and very shy individuals. They don't particularly mix well with what we call normal human beings. So they're wonderful people. I think that we categorise them totally incorrectly. Okay. Next question: are these energy sets related in any way to our DNA strands? And do we have 12 strands or not? There's an awful lot of misinformation about DNA. DNA is simply a communication medium that's both physically and energetically represented, and so it works with the RNA as well, which communicates to the DNA and programs it, and then the DNA communicates back to the RNA, which feeds back into the energetic templates to say that if the gross physical aspects of the human form is responding correctly to the templates. But the number of DNA strands is not an indication of high frequency. In fact, it means nothing in my understanding. It is simply the potential to have a greater level of detail, or in some respect a greater level of misfunction, depending upon where we are. Now I think we have 7 levels of DNA strand right now, and the interesting thing is the mouse genome is so close to the human genome. It's unbelievable. That's why there's a lot of work in vivisection based upon on the mouse genome, because it's so close to human genome. But if you had 12 strands, all it would mean is that there's much more capability for mutation. Much more capability for potential regeneration, for instance, of limbs. Much more potential for physical multifunctionality. Nothing, as far as I can see, that's related to the energetic. From a physical perspective, clearly, if there's an energetic function associated with DNA, which there is, then there will be more communication between the templates associated with the gross physical and the spiritual and physical aspect of what we are, and the actual gross physical as it is now. So basically, in terms of 12 DNA strands, physically it means nothing. Energetically, it would mean there's a greater level of connectivity between the incarnate soul and its physical vehicle. It would be easier to control it, to manipulate it, to manifest healing, for instance. Okay. Good question. Okay. I think I was making sure that the question here. Okay. Are these energy sets related in any way to our percentage of yang or masculine and percentage of yin, feminine energy composition? Are these energy sets related in any way to our percentage of yang or masculine and percentage of yin, feminine energy composition? No. It's simply a functionality. The yin and yang, the masculine and feminine, the black and the white, the up and the down, left and right, forwards and backwards, is simply a dualistic function associated with the physical universe and how the human body's been designed to reproduce. Clearly, there are energy sets associated with the chromosomes, etc., and the DNA associated with whether the human form is male or female. But in essence, the energy sets themselves don't specifically mean anything from that perspective, because when we're talking about higher functionality, higher frequential functionality, there's no difference between masculine and feminine. There's just energy. Okay, so let's have a look at give us these questions. A bipolar person has two souls in one body, but one is meant to be active and the other is passive. Yeah, I mean that's similar to a quadrupolar person, which would be, for instance, with the world leader example, where we have four souls in one body. Again, it's two whole souls occupying one particular physical vehicle. The energies are whole compared to, they're wholly one soul or wholly another soul. There's no, how can we call it? There's no hybrid function, no composite function. They are specific. They're just two souls occupying the same body, except the one is active and the one's passive. And sometimes you can get the changing over, where the one that's passive becomes active and the one that was active becomes passive. And that's a malfunction, basically. That's when there's a malfunction in terms of the agreements between the souls as to who is going to be the observer and who is going to be the experiencer. And that usually happens with souls that are inexperienced, so to speak, in using the same body as another soul. Next question: how are these two souls positioned or demarked within the body? Where do their soul energies sit, e.g. the soul seat or elsewhere? Right, when I've worked with people who've got problems associated with multiple souls or aspects in the same body, I tend to see like a room. I tend to see like a room where one is in the control room and the others are in the observation room. But that's just a function of how I'm interpreting the information associated with how to turn those that are in the control room but shouldn't be back into the observation room. So I tend to see it that way. But in terms of how we normally incarnate, what we would have is where the energy comes through this little vortex, this little tube that we call it the Hara line, goes down through this point not too far away from the crown chakra, down through the body and coalesces at the Tantien, which is around 75 millimeters or 3 inches above the navel, and 75 millimeters or 3 inches into the centre of the body. That's where the energy starts to disperse, and the energy associated with the aspect or the soul, if you like, occupies the energy lines and becomes associated with the chakras, whether they're major, minor, or mini chakras, and the meridians that allow the communication between that particular soul or souls and the body. So they both sit there at the same time. Now, if one particular soul is driving the body, then the energies that would be in the Tantien to drive the body stay there. If there's another soul in the body, then that doesn't happen. It's like, it's there, it's not there. It's cut off, so to speak. It has to stay there because that's where it is. But the sentience associated with that energy for both the driving soul and the passive soul goes into the soul seat, which sits just behind the heart chakra, the front aspect of the heart chakra. So this is where you start to see the sentience in the same place. The difference is one sentience is connected to the Tantien and has access to the motor functions, so to speak, of the human form, whereas the other one has sentience in the soul seat, has access to the energies, its energies within the Tantien. If you remember, the sentience uses energy to move around, but it doesn't have access to the motor functions of the human body. But sometimes there's a little bit of, shall we say, a change of desire, so to speak, and they can be swapping around. If it's designed that the life plan of that particular body for those two souls or three souls or four souls is such that each of the souls can gain access to the motor functions of the body, then they will do. But in general, the energies sit in the Tantien and the sentience sits in the soul seat. The Tantien is above the navel in towards the body, and the soul seat, which is where the sentience is just behind the heart chakra. Okay, so they're in the same place basically. It's just that one's got access to certain functions, and the other one doesn't. Actually, this next question says, how do you heal a bipolar person energetically? By rearranging their soul demarcations within the human thought. I just mentioned that I see them in two rooms, and this is purely a function of how I'm interpreting with my own experiential language, so to speak, my vocabulary of what I'm seeing. And so what I tend to do is communicate with that soul and move its sentience, so to speak, or its connectivity out of the control room and into the observation room, so to speak. You could argue that you take them out of the driving seat of the car and put them in the back seat of the car. That sort of thing. So and what works for me might work in a different way for a different healer in terms of the interpretation of what they're seeing and how the souls are connected. But clearly the way I've just described there is a metaphoric function of what's happening rather than the actual function of what's happening. And sometimes the spiritual user interface associated with healing is much simpler than the actual connectivity and the work that we do as healers. So, for instance, the act of communicating with the two souls and moving one soul out of the driving seat of the car, for instance, putting it in the back seat, and the other soul out of the back seat and into the driving seat of the car, may actually be creating a link between the energies associated with the Tantien and the sentience of one soul, allowing those to connect to the motor functions of the muscles and the neurons and the ligaments, etc., and have connectivity to the rest of the chakras and the meridians, and then withdrawing connectivity from those very same things for the other soul and locking it into the Tantien with no connection to the outside world. So the actual work involved could be a lot more detailed if you were to do it by going into the detail of it versus using the metaphoric function of just swapping the drivers around. It depends upon how the healer works as to how it works. My experience with this is that if you get a feeling of how to interact with a patient, and you're given imagery, and that imagery is the gateway into healing them, or should I say the gateway into your presence, either physical or energetic, allowing them to heal themselves through their desire to be healed. And so if you get a complicated procedure presented to you, then use that complicated procedure. If you've got something which is almost cartoon-like and metaphoric, then use that. They both work the same. It's just one could be classified as a pretty user interface, whereas one is adjusting the code behind the user interface, if that makes that in computer language. Okay. So this leads to question 2, which is, please tell us more about your new book you're writing, The Curators. Okay. The title, The Curators, was given to me literally after the 3rd page. I was writing a book that was based upon understanding the roles, responsibilities and functions of the source's maintenance entities. Those entities that aren't in the evolutionary cycle. They are purely of service for those who are in the evolutionary cycle. And there's lots of them, lots of different types. There's obviously we know about elementals. We know about what we call them, fairies or leprechauns or pixies or elves, those sorts of things. And we know about supposedly other higher functions of angels, archangels, seraphim, and lots of other different types of names or labels that have been given to us by religion. and there's a lot of crossover, by the way, between the different religions. So this particular book is talking about more detail behind the structure of the multiverse that our source has created for us to work with, and therefore, as we work and experience and evolve, it also does the same thing. But on top of that, it's also got this group of entities that are maintaining its evolutionary efficiency, so to speak, and changing its frequential state of being and its ability to serve us as we progress in our own evolutionary cycle. So it's all about these individual entities who are helping us as, they're our guides, they're our helpers, they are maintaining the structure of the multiverse in every way, shape or form. And so it's all to do with that. So I've only just started it, so it's going to take, I feel, about 18 months, but it might take longer, it might take shorter. I'm beginning to feel energetically with the book there's going to be a challenge. Probably more of a challenge than the Origin Speaks because of the information there. But it might not. It's just that I'm just feeling it's going to be a bit of a challenge at the moment because of the sort of uncertainty as to which direction you could go, how deep it is. But I've always experienced this level of challenge. I always sit down on my computer and think, what's going to happen next? So it's always a case of wondering what details are going to come out this week, and how can I possibly understand it? So it's going to be an interesting book. It's going to sort of again fill a few gaps in our knowledge. Chris has just given us a percentage of his yin and yang, his male and female energies, which is quite nice. And he's asked when we can get the And Dialogues book. Well, the And Dialogues was submitted to Ozark, my publisher, at the end of October last year. And there is an understanding, well, there was an understanding when Dolores was alive, that existing authors would be given the yay or nay, the yes or no, and whether they were going to publish another book from a particular author within 6 weeks. Well, it's been nearly 3 months now. It's been more than just over 3 months now. And although I feel I've had positive feedback from Julia last year before I finished the book, and she was showing lots of interest in it, I've not actually had any formal response yet. So right now I don't even know if it's going to be published. I'm going to, I think, I'm trying to resist the need to give them an email and find out what their thoughts are, where they are. But I'm sort of feeling at the moment that because there's a lot of work going on in the background with the organisation of Ozark as a publisher now that Dolores has moved on, that things in certain areas are having to be learnt by different members of the organisation, and that they're having to sort of learn the ropes and understand how to do things in a more speedier or efficient way. Because I know that it's not Julia who's doing the reading; it's Nancy. So it's going to be. It depends how fast Nancy reads these things. But we'll see. We'll see. If it's going to be published, it'll be published. But I feel it will be because there's lots of information there. But even when I get the okay, it can be anything from 6 to 9 months before it comes on the shelves, because there's a lot of work involved with publishing a book, a lot of checks. And even though we've checked it here about 7 times, proofread it 7 times, there'll be little bits and pieces which sneak out as a result of the publisher's editing process. Okay, great. So thank you for asking anyway. The last question from Ilva is: are these energy sets related in any way? Okay, we got that bit. Okay. Okay. Oh yes. Do some people have more masculine energy than feminine energy, so they prefer to incarnate in masculine bodies? My understanding is no, but there is a preference that is sometimes generated for incarnating into a particular form factor. And I say form factor because I'm not specifically restricting ourselves to the human form, because there are many forms that are used in the various different environmental locations within the physical universe. And so it's not specifically whether it's male or female, whether it's Chinese or Japanese or Indian or West Indian or Western European. You know, it can be any of the other bodies of the form factors that are used in the rest of the physical universe in any of the frequencies. And so it tends to be a preference, basically. Some souls do like certain body types because they feel that they are more able to perform a more efficient incarnation in that particular body type than another. So if one particular soul or aspect decides that it prefers to have, from the human aspect, the female body, it may well continue to incarnate in the female body. But there has to be a balance, and so there has to be some form of balance between the male and female side. And sometimes if there's if the balance is tipped towards one particular humanoid form, of the male or female, and there's a sudden change to use the male body rather than the female body, for instance, or female rather than male body, then there can be gender assignment issues that are coming through energetically rather than through physically. So it's all about sometimes one particular soul may have been incarnated into a male body 12 lives in the trust, and then go into a female body, and there might be a little level of confusion there, because there's still some past life memory there that says, oh, I was in a female form last time, and I'm in a male body now, so this doesn't feel right, and vice versa. And that's what happens. And then sometimes there's simply the love of two individuals, and the form, the body type of the male, female, just doesn't matter. You know, it's a case of these individuals, they just love each other, and it doesn't matter if they're two male, two female, or male and female. It's immaterial. It's whether they enjoy life together, and they can allow themselves to move forwards from there and enjoy their incarnation together. Okay, so thank you for those questions. I'm going to now move on to the meditation, if that's okay with everybody. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us, 9 including me. Okay, I think John's had to leave, so that's okay. He's got some important business to work with. But his thought processes will be with us anyway. So we're going to work on the opportunity for spreading some world peace here now. Okay, so it's a meditation to help remove world conflict. So I want you all to close your eyes and sit in your chairs with your back straight, your palms open and presented palm uppermost on your upper thighs. And what we're going to do is just visualize us all walking down a corridor, a white corridor that doesn't have any doors on the left or on the right, but there's a door right at the end of this corridor. So we're walking down this corridor, and the only door we see is right at the end of the corridor. There's There's nothing on the left and there's nothing on the right. And I want you to open this door. It's at the end of the corridor when you get there, and walk through. And you'll see a ring of chairs, or shall I say a circle of chairs, with us all there. So find yourself a chair, and if you want to, you can position yourself next to me. If you see me there, you can either be on my left hand side or my right hand side. You can see everybody else who's in the Satsanga today also in that room, and so each of us will be next to each other. We'll have somebody on our left hand side and somebody on our right hand side. And now I want you to visualise that each of you is holding somebody else's hand. So for instance, in my particular visualisation, I've got my right hand is holding Yvonne's left hand, and Yvonne's left hand is holding Mo's right hand, and Mo's left hand is holding Jeremy's right hand, and Jeremy's left hand is holding Marita's right hand, and Marita's left hand is holding Barella's left hand, etc. So we're moving around past Chris and Ulla and Terry. Okay, so we've got everybody's got somebody's right hand in their left hand and left hand in their right hand. So we're all holding each other's hands. We're all connected together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of us. So that's 9 times 9. That's the synergetic effect of us all working together. And in front of us, in the centre of this circle of chairs, there's a holographic vision of the Earth. And this holographic vision of the Earth is generally a nice iridescent, glowing golden and white and silver representation of the Earth. I say in general, because this is what the Earth wants to be. But as this Earth rotates, it rotates in two directions, so it rotates around in a clockwise fashion along its latitudinal axis and a north to south fashion, or in its longitudinal axis, so it's rotating in both latitude and longitude. Just gives it this strange sort of diagonal rotation. And it's just doing this so that we can see every part of it. And when we can see every part of it, we start to see that this bright, iridescent golden and white energy is not complete. There are some areas over some various different countries or parts of the world where it's dark or black. As we look closer, and the rotation now becomes the normal anti-clockwise rotation, we see that these things aren't just black spots. They're areas where there's lower frequency. So it's a little bit like there's a sinkhole in the surface of the Earth which is normally golden, the iridescent golden and white light. And the area where it's of a locally low frequency, we get this sinkhole going down, which ends up being black. And we see this in lots of different areas of the world. Right now we're seeing it in Syria, we've seen it in Russia and the Ukraine before. Prior to that we've seen it in other places like Ethiopia. Lots of refugees coming from the Middle East and the States. All of these areas have got locally low frequency. They've got all these little sink marks on a normally high frequency surface of the Earth. So what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate on these areas and visualize that each of these areas can be filled in. So just pick a particular sinkhole that you can see in your mind's eye. If you want to, you can imagine yourself with a teapot or a kettle or a watering can or something of pure higher frequency energy, and you're simply filling in these low frequency areas, these locally low frequency parts of the Earth. And so we're introducing higher frequency energy into areas of locally low energy. Locally low frequency becomes locally high frequency. As we drop in and fill up these sinkholes, slowly and slowly, so they start to move up the frequencies. As we give them higher frequency using our visualization process, whichever way you want to use it, either pouring energy in, high frequency energy in, or just visualizing its energy slowly rising in these locally low areas of frequency around the Earth. And as we increase the frequential state of these areas of locally low frequency, these sinkholes get shallower and shallower. The more high frequency energy we pour into these sinkholes collectively together, the higher the frequency of that locally low area, and the shallower these sinkholes become. And so we start to stabilize and normalize the frequential state of the Earth from a state where it's got a general state of high frequency energy with lots of little sink marks where there's locally low frequency activity, areas where there's war, where there's famine, where people don't work together, to areas where these locally low frequency areas start to become higher frequency and the wars start to stop and there's no famine and people are working together to help each other. Everybody starts to become more self-aware. They start to realise who and what they are and what their reason is for being here. And when they know this, all they want to do is to help each other climb the evolutionary ladder whilst incarnate. And so in filling up these areas of locally low frequency, normalizing the frequential state to one higher level of base frequency, we get to the point where the whole Earth is the same level. And all these areas of these hot spots of aggression, of war, of famine, of attrition, of the need to move away, starts to disappear. Areas where that were previously in conflict start to experience no conflict. They start to experience brotherhood and sisterhood, and self-awareness and understanding. These areas of poverty start to become areas of plenty, of abundance, where there's more than enough and everybody gives to everybody else. Low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions start to become high frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions. Nobody's jealous, nobody's worried, nobody's afraid, nobody's fearful. Nobody's materialistic. And so the work you've done there will help to balance the energy. In fact, it has balanced the energy already around the Earth, filling in these little sinkholes, these little areas of locally low frequency, creating a single solid ball of energy that we call the Earth, that is of one frequential state. Assisting in everybody starting to question who and what they are, what they're doing, and seeking enlightenment in their own lifetime. And so their job done, we can focus on being back in the white room. We can disconnect ourselves from everybody else by letting go of the person's right hand we have in our left hand, and the person's left hand we have in our right hand. And slowly joy in our hearts, knowing that we've made a significant difference to the frequential state of the Earth. We move out of our chair, walk to the door in the room, open the door, and moved it back down towards and through the white corridor, down to the point where we found ourselves moving into the white corridor. And when you're ready, you can slowly come back into the room. Very simple thing to do, this meditation. Very simple. Just see what you feel is a locally low spot and fill it with high frequency energy. When you come back into the room, if you just happen to have some water around, you can drink the water, or if it's tea, for instance, you can drink that, or coffee, just to sort of help stabilise you and ground you. And you can start to open your eyes. Open your eyes before you take your drink, of course. We don't want to miss our mouth. Okay, thank you very much for participating in this month's Satsanga. Next month's Satsanga is going to be a little bit earlier because of my movements around the planet, and just having a look and see what date it's likely to be. And it's looking like it's going to be March the 12th. Yeah, March the 12th, same time as normal. March the 12th. So it's going to be a week earlier than last time. thank you everybody for joining in. Thank you Yvonne, thank you Mo, Jeremy, thank you Marita, thank you Morella, thank you Chris, thank you Ola, thank you Terry, thank you John, and we'll see you later. And Ola, that's a very good question. It's not daylight savings for us. No, we change at the end of March, so please check your time zones. It will still be Greenwich Mean Time for the UK. So I'll just make a note on the emails to say check your time zones, because some people will be moving forwards. I know the US tend to move forwards a couple of weeks before us. Yes, thanks Chris, event space zones, yeah. So we're basically, just be careful about your time zone, because it's likely that the US will be already into summertime. Okay. Thank you everybody. It's been fantastic feeling your energy and your participation and your devotion to doing good and being of service to others. And looking forward to working with you in March. Okay. So good night to everybody, and blessings to you all, and God's love to you as well.
Did you see the aliens in Crete?